and for 3 years I thought I was building a life with the man I loved. His name was Charles. At least I used to say it with pride. Now, when it passes through my lips, it tastes like ash. I still remember the first time the ground beneath us cracked, though. Back then, I convinced myself it was nothing. We were at a dinner with his coworkers. Someone asked how we met. I expected him to tell our little story that he found me when I was struggling with an awful apartment and how we'd clicked instantly like two people finally exhaling. But Charles didn't say any of that. Instead, he laughed lightly, waved his glass, and said, Audria kind of rescued me from my terrible roommate situation. Roommate. That word lodged in my chest like glass. The table chuckled politely, no one thinking much of it. But I did. It wasn't we fell for each other. It wasn't she's the best thing that ever happened to me. It was she helped me out with rent. I brushed it off that night, but deep down something shifted. By year 2, his hand no longer reached for mine in public. His phone gallery no longer had pictures of us. And when he introduced me, it was never "this is my girlfriend Audria," just "this is Audria." Do you know how small your name can sound when stripped of meaning? When the weight of my girlfriend is stolen from it? Whenever I brought it up, Charles shrugged. I'm not big on labels anymore, but he was still big on letting me cover the bills, wasn't he? I started noticing patterns. Rent I paid 70%. Groceries, me. Utilities, phone plan, car insurance, also me. The landlord's calls, repairs, paperwork, all routed through me. It was like I had become the administrator of our lives while he floated above the boring parts. And when his laundry wasn't done, he'd reach into my closet and steal my hoodies, claiming them until they smelled more like him than me. I told myself this is just what couples do, balance each other out. But the balance wasn't there. I was carrying it all. Then came the Tuesday night that burned itself into my memory. I got home early, hoping maybe for a quiet dinner together. Instead, I heard Charles in the bedroom phone pressed to his ear. His voice was casual, almost amused. You know what's funny, he said. Melissa asked if we're still together, and I was like, it's complicated. We're more like roommates now, like siblings who happen to live together. Siblings. The word punched me in the stomach. I froze in the hallway, my groceries still in my hands, hearing him laugh. Roommates. Siblings. When I walked in, he didn't even look embarrassed. Come on, Audrey, you know what I mean. We're comfortable. I looked at the bed we shared. The closet full of my clothes, mixed with his. The bills stacked neatly on the desk, with my handwriting all over them. Comfortable, was that all I was to him? Comfort? That night I lay awake, listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside me. My mind replayed the words again and again, roommates, siblings. 2 weeks later, the wound deepened. Charles was on another call. His voice carried through the thin apartment walls. Honestly, we were never that compatible romantically. I think we both just settled. She's sweet, but no real chemistry. Because I remembered. I remembered how in the beginning he couldn't keep his hands off me. How he'd send me texts in the middle of the day thinking of you, this reminded me of us. How he'd drag me into bed on lazy Sunday mornings just to hear me laugh against his shoulder. Had I dreamed that? Did I invent a version of us that never truly existed? The next morning, he came home glowing, talking about Melissa from work. How witty she was, how much she understood him, how they might grab drinks sometime as friends. Friends, he said, but I heard the hunger beneath it. I started paying attention after that. His stories overflowed with her name. Melissa said this. Melissa laughed at that. Melissa gets me. And me, I had become a placeholder. The breaking point came at his company holiday party. He invited me as his plus one, and stupidly, I thought maybe that meant he still saw us as a couple. But when we arrived under the glittering lights, surrounded by people I'd never met, he introduced me like this. This is Audria, we live together. I felt every eye slide over me, measuring, judging, dismissing. Later, I overheard him tell Melissa directly, we're basically just friends now, figuring out the transition. Melissa smiled relieved. She leaned closer to him, and I stood there, champagne glass trembling in my hand, realizing that the man I loved had already rewritten our story. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his past. On the drive home, I asked quietly, so, we're exes now. He scoffed. Don't be dramatic. We're comfortable, like really good friends who split rent. Friends, roommates, siblings, never girlfriend, never partner. And yet I was still the one keeping his world afloat. I stared out the car window that night, city lights blurring past like a string of broken promises. Somewhere between the glow of street lamps and the silence between us, I knew this was no longer love. This was survival for him, and slow death for me. Melissa. Her name began as just a passing mention, a coworker part of some team project. But slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor, she seeped into every corner of Charles's conversations. Melissa said the funniest thing today. Melissa just gets my sense of humor. Melissa thinks I should try that new restaurant downtown. Every time he spoke her name, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. And I sat there stirring pasta on the stove, wondering when I'd stopped being the one who made his eyes sparkle. I noticed the shift in his tone. He used to come home to me, his words spilling out in eager waves. You wouldn't believe the day I had Audria. But now he filtered his life through Melissa first. By the time he relayed it to me, it was a watered down echo. And the cruelest part, he didn't even hide it. One evening, he leaned against the kitchen counter, grinning at his phone. Melissa thinks I should grow my hair out. She says it would suit me. I bit down on my lip until I tasted copper. My opinion had never carried that weight, but hers suddenly gospel. Then came the holiday party, the moment that stripped away whatever scraps of denial I'd been clinging to. The venue was glittering with silver streamers and low jazz, the air sharp with perfume and expensive champagne. Charles clasped my elbow as we walked in. But it wasn't affection, it was choreography, like an actor guiding his scene partner. This is Audria, he told his coworkers, flashing his rehearsed smile. Well, we live together. A murmur of polite nods, some confused glances. My cheeks burned hot enough to ignite the glass in my hand. Later, I drifted near the bar, invisible as wallpaper, and that's when I caught it. Melissa, tall and confident in her emerald dress, laughing with Charles. It must be awkward living with an ex, she said. Ex! I opened my mouth to correct her, but Charles beat me to it. We're not exes exactly. More like transitioning. Melissa smiled, relieved. She placed a hand on his arm, her nails catching the light. And I knew. I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his partner. I was just the ghost he hadn't bothered to exorcise yet. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I laughed when I was supposed to clink glasses on cue, but my insides felt hollow. Every time Charles leaned closer to Melissa, I felt myself shrinking. On the drive home, I tried to breathe. So we're exes now, I asked, voice thin as paper. Don't be dramatic, Audria, he said, eyes fixed on the road. We're just comfortable, friends who split rent. You're overthinking it. But the truth screamed louder than his dismissal. I wasn't overthinking. I was being erased. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to him type away on his phone. The glow lit his face, soft and eager. He was still awake at 2 a.m., probably talking to her. And for the first time in 3 years, I whispered to myself, this isn't love. This is humiliation dressed as routine. But something inside me shifted that night. A quiet ember sparked. I didn't know it yet, but I was done being invisible. Soon he would learn that the woman he thought would always carry his weight was preparing to let it crash on him instead. The morning after the holiday party, Charles strolled into the kitchen, humming, pouring himself coffee as if nothing had happened. I studied him across the table, his easy grin, his obliviousness, and something inside me hardened. If he thought I was just a roommate, then maybe it was time I started acting like one. That week I made calls, quietly, methodically. I called the phone company. Please remove Charles from my plan. Set him up with his own line. I called the streaming services. Cancel the shared account. He can open his own. Utilities, Wi-Fi. Even our grocery delivery subscription, every account where my name carried his weight, I cut the cord. It wasn't rage that guided me, it was clarity. When his phone service cut out, he came into the living room holding the dead device like it was broken glass. Audria, my phone isn't working. What happened? I sipped my tea. I switched you to your own plan. You'll need to set it up. He blinked. But I don't have time to deal with that. Work's insane. I tilted my head, feigning sympathy. You'll figure it out. The way he looked at me like I'd spoken another language almost made me laugh. For years, I'd been the translator between him and the adult world. Now, I was silent. A few days later, he shouted from the living room, Audria, Netflix isn't loading. I canceled it, I said, walking past him. You can get your own account. He stared after me, dumbfounded. What's going on with you? You're being weird. Weird, no. I was finally being sane. Meanwhile, Charles's friendship with Melissa blossomed. He stayed out later, came home glowing with stories about her, and I listened with a calm smile, already knowing what he didn't, his safety net was vanishing. I started packing quietly. Not the obvious things at first, just small items, clothes folded into spare suitcases, books disappearing from the shelves one by one. Charles never noticed. He was too busy scrolling through his phone, laughing at whatever Melissa had texted. Then, on a Saturday, when he was at Melissa's gallery opening, I called the movers. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, my side of the apartment was stripped clean. The couch gone. The dishes I'd bought boxed. The bed frame dismantled. What was left was the bare skeleton of a life, just enough for him to sit in and feel the emptiness. I left my key on the counter with a note. Transition complete. The next morning, my phone rang. His voice was frantic. Audria. What the hell is this? Where's all your stuff? You can't just leave. I let his words wash over me. The irony burned sweet. You said we were just friends. Just roommates. I moved out like friends do. This is insane. We have a lease together. You're abandoning me. Abandoning? I echoed, my tone sharp. Funny choice of word. Adults don't call paying their own bills abandonment. They call it responsibility. Silence. Just his breathing, ragged, stunned. For years, I'd been the one terrified of letting go. But now I realized the terrifying part was staying. When I hung up, I looked around my new apartment, smaller, humbler, but undeniably mine. For the first time in months, I could breathe. And somewhere in the city, Charles was staring at the ruins of a comfort he thought would never leave him. It didn't take long for the silence to echo back to me through friends. Charles was unraveling. At first, he tried to play it off. Emma, a mutual friend, mentioned seeing him at a bar with Melissa. He looked fine, she said, but her tone carried hesitation. Because even fine has cracks if you know where to look. A week later, the cracks widened. Charles had gone to Melissa with a proposition move-in. Split the rent, maybe see where things go. She laughed. Not cruelly, but firmly. She wasn't looking for commitment, not with him. She liked the banter, the attention, the thrill of someone hanging on her every word. But sharing bills. Sharing a life, that was Audria's role, not hers. When Emma told me this, I felt a strange calm wash over me. It wasn't satisfaction, not quite revenge, just validation. Without me, the apartment was too expensive. The rent I'd once shouldered alone now pressed its full weight on him. The landlord called him now. The utilities, the subscriptions, his name on every line. He was drowning in an ocean he'd never bothered to learn how to swim. 2 months in, Charles broke. He moved back in with his parents. Meanwhile, I was building something new. My apartment was small, yes. The walls thin, the kitchen barely wide enough for 2 people. But it was mine. Every bill in my own name. Every picture on the walls, chosen by me. I bought a second-hand couch, stitched a throw blanket across it, and one evening I curled up with a book and realized this piece was worth more than any illusion of love I'd once begged for. But Charles didn't fade quietly. The text started. I miss you. I think I made a mistake. Can we grab coffee? I ignored them. Then came the longer ones. Audria, please. I know I hurt you, but we had something good. We were good together. I was confused, but I see things clearly now. Can we please talk? I stared at the screen, numb. 3 years reduced to desperate lines typed at midnight. When I didn't respond, the voicemails followed. His voice cracked with urgency. I know you're mad, but this is silly. We were together for 3 years. That has to mean something. I was stupid. Please, I want to fix this. I pressed delete again and again, but the persistence wore on me. It wasn't that I wanted him back. It was that his words reminded me of how much of myself I'd wasted on someone who only realized my worth when he no longer had access to it. Then, one Saturday morning, a knock at my door. I opened it to find him standing there, holding coffee and bagels the way he used to when we still pretended to be happy. His eyes darted around my new apartment. We need to talk, he said, brushing past me before I could answer. I let him in, not because I wanted him there, but because I wanted him to see what a life without him looked like. Neat, peaceful, whole. Charles stood in my living room, eyes scanning the shelves, the rug, the soft lamp glow. It was all mine, every item chosen, without his input, without his shadow. He looked unsettled, as though he'd stepped into a version of reality where he no longer belonged. Audria, he started, voice low. I've had time to think. I miss what we had. I folded my arms. What did we have, Charles? He blinked, thrown. We were good together. We balanced each other out. As what I pressed. Roommates, siblings, a sponsor, and her dependent. Remind me which label you preferred, because girlfriend certainly wasn't one of them. He winced. That's not fair. Fair. The word burned on my tongue. You told people we weren't compatible, that we were just friends, that I was basically your roommate. But now that your comfort is gone, suddenly I'm worth missing." He stepped closer, desperation etched into his face. "I was confused, Audrey. I said stupid things. I was scared of commitment." "No," I cut in, my voice steady. "You weren't scared of commitment. You were scared of losing the perks without giving anything back. You wanted security and excitement, stability and novelty. You wanted a safety net while you tested your wings." His mouth opened, then closed. For once, he didn't have a clever answer. "You know what's funny?" I continued, my tone soft but sharp as glass. "If you'd told me you had doubts 6 months ago, we could have worked through it, or ended things cleanly. But instead, you rewrote our history while living off my income." His face crumpled, but I felt no sympathy. "Tell me, Charles," I asked, "when's my birthday?" He frowned, stammering. "It's in October, right? The 12th. I laughed bitterly. "It's May. You lived with me 3 years, and you don't know the month I was born." He tried again, voice cracking. "That doesn't mean. What's my favorite movie? What do I want to do with my life? What makes me happy?" "Charles, can you answer even one of those?" Silence. The only sound was the hum of my refrigerator in the background. Tears welled in his eyes. "I made a mistake." "No." My voice was quiet but unshakable. "You made a choice. Over and over. You chose to use me, dismiss me, humiliate me, and now you want me back because no one else wants the version of you that doesn't come with my support." He reached out, but I stepped back. "Audrey, please. I love you." I shook my head. "You love having someone reliable to fall back on. That's not the same thing." His shoulders sagged. For the first time since I'd known him, Charles looked small. "I wanted to have my cake and eat it too," he whispered finally, honest. I nodded. "At least you admit it." For a long moment we stood in silence, him broken and pleading, me calm and detached, as if all the years had already dissolved into dust. Then I opened the door. "It's over, Charles. Leave." He hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the hallway, as if searching for some crack in my resolve. But there was none left. "So that's it?" he asked, voice trembling. "That's it." He stepped out slowly, like a man walking into exile. I closed the door behind him, leaning against the wood. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. All I felt was relief. After Charles left, I stood in the stillness of my apartment. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was freedom. No buzzing phone, no late-night laughter, meant for someone else, no bills stamped with his name. Just me breathing in a life I'd rebuilt from the ground up. Weeks turned into months, and with time, the ache dulled into clarity. I realized something simple, something I should have known long ago. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for years, hoping the version of them you imagined will one day step into the light. Charles had shown me, again and again. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. But life has a way of filling the spaces we clear. That spring, I met Ryan at a work seminar. He was nothing like Charles, steady, warm, curious. He remembered the little things, the way I take my coffee, the book I mentioned once in passing, the fact that my birthday was in May. When we traveled, he split every cost. When we went to dinner, he introduced me as my girlfriend, with ease. No hesitation, no shrinking away from labels. For the first time, I felt like a partner instead of a placeholder. And then, as if fate wanted to test my resolve, I saw Charles again. It was a Saturday evening at a downtown restaurant. Ryan and I were waiting for our table when I spotted him across the room, alone at the bar. His shoulders slumped, his eyes scanning the door as if hoping someone would appear. When he saw me, his face paled. He stood walking over. "Audrey," he said, voice hushed. "I've been trying to reach you." I smiled politely the way you do at an old acquaintance. "Charles, this is Ryan. Ryan, this is Charles. We used to be roommates." Charles's face fell, the color draining completely. His own words mirrored back at him. The same dismissal he'd once wielded so casually now cut into him like ice. Ryan, oblivious to the history, offered a handshake. Charles barely managed a nod. "Can we talk?" Charles whispered, his eyes pleading. I shook my head gently. "We already did. There's nothing left." Ryan placed his hand on my back as the host called our name. I turned to leave, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to look back. Later that night, as Ryan poured us wine in my apartment, he asked softly, "Do you miss him?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I miss who I thought he was," I said finally. "But that person might never have existed." Ryan nodded, his hand brushing mine. "Sometimes we love people for their potential, not their reality." "Exactly," I whispered. And in that moment, I felt the chapter close completely. Charles wasn't my tragedy anymore. He was just a lesson. A reminder that love without respect is just dependency, that partnership without reciprocity is just exploitation. I had spent years being Charles's safety net. Now I had finally learned to fly without him. And as I curled up next to Ryan, laughter spilling into the quiet, I realized